Aisha Johnson sat on the cracked sidewalk, her fingers trembling as she gripped her son Jamal's hand. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light over the city, but Aisha felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Jamal, only 6, had been through so much: frequent doctor visits, hospital stays, and endless treatments. Yet his smile never wavered. He was the reason Aisha pushed herself harder every day, the reason she endured every moment of hardship. She looked at the car dealership before her, luxurious cars gleaming in the window, each one far out of her reach. Her heart ached, a familiar sting of bitterness rising as she noticed the young man outside, washing one of the cars. She pulled her son closer and smiled softly, trying to ignore the pain in her chest. "Mommy, look. That car is like the ones we see on TV." Jamal's voice was full of innocent excitement as he tugged at her sleeve. "Can we take a picture with it?" Aisha looked at him, her heart swelling with love. "Of course, baby." They stood in front of the shiny vehicle, Aisha holding Jamal close, smiling for the camera. The picture wasn't for anyone but her son, a reminder of how far they'd come, how much they'd survived together. As Aisha snapped the photo, a voice broke through her moment of happiness. "Hey, what do you think you're doing with that car?" The young man approached them quickly, his voice rising with anger. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't noticed him walking toward them, but his expression was anything but friendly. "We were just taking a picture," Aisha said, her voice calm but firm, trying to keep the situation from escalating. "It's just a photo." The young man wasn't convinced. "It's not your car, is it? You think you can just use it as a backdrop? You're gonna pay for the damage, you know." Aisha blinked, her confusion mixing with a growing sense of dread. "Damage? We were just—" "Don't lie to me. You've stained it," he interrupted, pointing to the hood. "You're gonna pay for that car wash, or I'll call the police." Aisha felt her breath catch in her throat. She searched for words, but there were none that could fix this, no explanation that could ease the situation. Her fingers brushed the small purse that hung by her side, the last of her cash tucked safely inside, the little she had left. She pulled it out, hesitating for a moment before handing the money over. The young man snatched it from her hand without another word, turning on his heel and walking away, leaving Aisha feeling like an unwanted stranger in a world that had no room for people like her. Jamal tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, are we going home now?" Aisha wiped a tear that threatened to fall. She couldn't let Jamal see how deeply the moment had affected her. Not now. Not when he needed her to be strong. "Yes, baby. Let's go home." The next day, Aisha walked into the office building with a mixture of hope and anxiety in her chest. She had spent weeks preparing her resume, brushing up on her skills, and praying for a chance to land a job that would lift her family from the shadow of their struggles. This was her opportunity, her shot at a better life for Jamal, a life where they wouldn't have to worry about the constant fear of medical bills and the uncertainty of their future. But as she stepped through the glass doors of the office building, a cold wave of doubt washed over her. She was used to being underestimated, used to the stares, the whispers, the assumption that people like her didn't belong in places like this. Aisha walked up to the receptionist, who barely looked up from her computer as Aisha announced her name. "Aisha Johnson. I'm here for an interview." The receptionist gave a quick nod and gestured for Aisha to take a seat. As Aisha sat down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She tried to steady her breath, to focus on the fact that she had earned this moment. She belonged here, just as much as anyone else. When her name was called, Aisha stood up and walked to the elevator. Her heart pounded in her chest as the doors closed behind her. She knew this was it. This was the chance she'd been working for. As she walked into the interview room, she was greeted by the company's HR manager, a woman named Rebecca, who seemed to regard Aisha with a polite but distant smile. Sitting across from her was the man who would ultimately decide her fate, Marcus Williams, the CEO. "Ms. Johnson," Marcus began, his voice warm but distant. "I've looked over your resume. You have an impressive background." Aisha felt a surge of pride. She had worked so hard to get here, to show that she was more than just a single mother struggling to make ends meet. "I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you both," Aisha said, forcing a calm tone as she sat down. But as the interview continued, Aisha began to feel the undercurrent of doubt creeping in. The questions shifted, more about her personal life, her responsibilities as a mother, her ability to balance work and home life. The underlying message was clear. Could she really manage it all? Was she, as a single mother, really qualified for a job at a high-level company like this? Aisha felt a pang in her chest, her mind racing with doubt, but she held her head high. She wasn't going to let their assumptions define her. Rebecca smiled and nodded politely. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We'll be in touch. Aisha stood up, her heart sinking. She wasn't sure if she'd made the cut, but she refused to believe it was over. She knew she had to keep fighting. For Jamal, for herself, for the life she had always dreamed of. But as she left the office building, something inside her told her this would be harder than she thought. Aisha left the office building, her head spinning. The weight of the interview still clung to her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't gone well. She had worked so hard to get here, to prove she was more than her circumstances. But the way they had focused on her motherhood, on the challenges of raising Jamal as a single parent, it felt like they were more interested in her limitations than her qualifications. She stepped out onto the busy city street, the world moving around her as if nothing had changed. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the chatter of people going about their day. But in that moment, she felt isolated, like an outsider. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd memorized by heart. Her mother. Hey, Mom, how's Jamal? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Same as always, baby. He misses you, her mother replied, her voice soothing. How did the interview go? Aisha hesitated, unsure how to answer. I think it went okay, she said, though she wasn't convinced. But they really focused on my personal life. You know, being a single mom. Her mother didn't respond right away. You're more than that, Aisha, she finally said. Don't let them make you feel less than. You've worked hard to get where you are. That's what matters. Aisha smiled weakly, her heart aching with gratitude. Thanks, Mom. I'll keep trying. After hanging up, Aisha made her way to the bus stop, her steps slow, her mind racing with uncertainty. She couldn't afford to lose this opportunity. Jamal's treatments were expensive, and every day felt like a tightrope walk between making ends meet and sinking further into debt. She couldn't let this moment slip through her fingers. The following morning, Aisha was up early, making breakfast for Jamal before sending him off to school. As she watched him walk down the street, her heart swelled with pride. Jamal was a fighter, just like his mother, and she wasn't going to let him down. As she grabbed her bag and prepared to head out, her phone buzzed. She stared at the screen, her breath catching when she saw the name, Marcus Williams. Aisha quickly swiped to answer. Hello, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Aisha. Marcus's voice came through the line, deep and authoritative. This is Marcus Williams from Williams Enterprises. I wanted to let you know that we've reviewed your application and your interview, and we've decided to offer you the position. Aisha felt her heart leap. You're offering me the job? Yes, Marcus replied, his tone warm yet professional. We were impressed by your experience and your drive. You'll be reporting directly to Rebecca, and we'll provide the support you need to get started. Aisha's mind raced. This was it. She'd done it. She had made it. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I promise I won't let you down. I'm confident you won't, Marcus said before ending the call. As Aisha stood in her small apartment, looking around at the familiar surroundings that had once felt like a prison, a flood of emotion overtook her. This job wasn't just a job. It was the opportunity she needed to change everything for Jamal. She could finally give him the life he deserved. But as quickly as the joy surged, a lingering doubt crept in. She had heard rumors about the company's corporate culture, the unspoken biases that ran deep beneath the surface. She couldn't help but wonder if her skin color, her status as a single mother, might make her a target. Would she be treated differently? Would they truly give her a fair chance? But those thoughts were fleeting. Aisha had come too far to let anything or anyone stand in her way. The first day at her new job felt like a whirlwind. Aisha had arrived early, eager to prove herself, but as she walked through the glass doors of Williams Enterprises, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The receptionist gave her a quick once-over before directing her to the elevator, and Aisha couldn't help but notice the subtle glances from the other employees. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she felt like an outsider. When she arrived at her desk, Rebecca greeted her with a warm smile, but there was something in her eyes, something that made Aisha feel like she was being scrutinized. as though Rebecca were measuring her up, wondering if she was really qualified for the position. As Aisha settled into her role, she quickly realized that the job wasn't as simple as she had thought. The pressure was immense, with constant deadlines, long hours, and demands from higher-ups. But Aisha was no stranger to hard work. She dove into her tasks with determination, refusing to let anything hold her back. But as the day wore on, she couldn't help but notice the subtle whispers from some of the other employees. One woman, Tara, had made a snide remark about Aisha's background when she thought no one was listening. Another had asked Aisha, in a tone laced with judgment, if she would be able to handle the stress of the job. It was clear that Aisha wasn't being given the same respect as her colleagues. She knew she was being treated differently, and though it hurt, she wasn't going to let them see her break. She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to succeed. And she would. The days that followed were a blur of work and exhaustion. Aisha woke up each morning determined to make the most of her new job, but it seemed that no matter how hard she worked, there was always something new that made her feel out of place. The whispers, the sideways glances, the feeling that she was being judged for things she couldn't change, it was exhausting. It was around the third week of Aisha's new job when things started to escalate. As the only black woman in the department, Aisha couldn't help but feel like an outsider in a world where she didn't belong. The other employees, all of them white, moved through the office with ease, exchanging inside jokes and friendly banter while she stood on the sidelines. Aisha had always been used to having to fight for her space, but here, in the midst of this corporate world, it felt like she was invisible. One afternoon, as Aisha was preparing a report for Marcus, Tara, the woman who had previously made the snide remarks about Aisha's background, approached her desk. Aisha looked up from her work, her mind still on the task at hand. "I see you've been working hard," Tara said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's nice that someone's pulling their weight around here." Aisha's heart raced, but she forced a smile. "I do my best," she said, her voice steady, despite the anger that bubbled beneath the surface. Tara didn't seem to notice the tension in Aisha's voice. "Well, don't get too comfortable," Tara continued. "It's not like you're going to be here long. There's a lot of pressure at this company. It's not for everyone." Aisha bit back the retort that was on the tip of her tongue. She knew that if she responded, it would only make things worse. So, instead, she nodded politely and returned to her work, trying to ignore the burn in her chest. Later that day, as Aisha was getting ready to leave for the evening, Marcus walked past her desk, stopping only briefly. He looked down at her with a neutral expression, as though he was trying to decide whether or not to acknowledge her. "Good work today, Aisha," Marcus said, his voice low. "I see you're settling in. Keep it up." Aisha's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she had a chance here after all. But as Marcus walked away, she caught a glimpse of Tara, who was watching her from across the room, her eyes filled with disdain. Aisha couldn't help but feel that Tara's comment had been more than just a casual remark. There was something about it, something personal. That night, Aisha sat in her small apartment, staring at the picture of Jamal on her phone. He was the reason she kept going, the reason she fought through the pain of feeling like an outsider. She couldn't afford to let the toxic environment at work break her. She had to stay strong for Jamal, for herself. As she thought about her next steps, Aisha remembered the advice her mother had given her. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. You are just as good as anyone else in that room, if not better." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Aisha knew her worth. She had earned her place at Williams Enterprises, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. The following week, Aisha faced an unexpected challenge. Rebecca, her direct supervisor, called her into her office for a meeting. Aisha's stomach twisted with nerves as she sat down across from Rebecca's desk, the air thick with tension. "Aisha," Rebecca began, her tone polite but distant. "I've noticed that you've been working hard, but there are some concerns that I need to address." Aisha's heart sank. She had expected something like this. Despite her efforts, she knew that there was always going to be something that they would find fault with. She braced herself for the criticism. "I've had a few complaints about your performance," Rebecca continued. "Some of the other team members have said that you're difficult to work with." Aisha blinked in surprise. "Difficult?" she repeated, trying to make sense of the accusation. Rebecca nodded. "Yes. They've said that you're unapproachable and that you don't collaborate well with the rest of the team." Aisha felt a surge of frustration. She had been working tirelessly, staying late and going above and beyond to prove herself. She hadn't expected to be hit with this accusation. "I've been doing my best," Aisha said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm here to do my job and contribute. Rebecca didn't seem convinced. I understand that, but you need to make sure you're fitting in with the team. If you want to succeed here, you have to play the game. Aisha's heart raced. She knew exactly what Rebecca was implying. Play the game, she repeated quietly, her mind working to understand how she could navigate this new world that seemed determined to shut her out. Rebecca gave her a tight smile. Yes, and it's not just about the work. It's about how you present yourself. You need to fit in. Aisha's mind spun. It wasn't just about her work. It was about her identity, her very being. She couldn't change who she was, but it felt like the game was rigged. The rules weren't designed for someone like her. But Aisha wasn't about to back down. She had fought too hard to get here. She would find a way to make this work, no matter how difficult it became. As she left Rebecca's office, Aisha felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The subtle racism she had been enduring was now out in the open, and she knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. The battle for her place at Williams Enterprises had just begun. She looked out the window of the office building, her eyes searching the horizon. She had come too far to let anything stop her now. Aisha woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. It was early, too early, but she'd learned to rise before the sun. She had to get Jamal ready for school, but her mind was already on the day ahead. The morning routine was always rushed, but today, there was a weight in the air. After the conversation with Marcus the day before, Aisha felt a shift within herself. She knew she had to face the mounting pressure in the office, but this time, something inside her felt different. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was drowning in the expectations. She was ready to fight back. After dropping Jamal off at school, she walked briskly to the bus stop, her thoughts racing. She wasn't just working for a paycheck anymore. She was working for a future, for Jamal's future, and for the recognition she deserved. As she rode the bus, the city flashing by the windows, her determination solidified. When Aisha arrived at the office, she was met with the usual glances, nothing new there. But today, she wasn't going to let it bother her. She marched to her desk, sat down, and immediately began to tackle the report that had been lingering on her mind. It wasn't just a report anymore. It was a test. She was going to show them that she was more than capable, that she wasn't just another face at Williams Enterprises. She was an asset. But as she got deeper into her work, the familiar feeling of being watched returned. Tara was standing at her desk, talking to a colleague, casting glances in Aisha's direction. It wasn't the usual passive-aggressive behavior. There was something more malicious in her eyes. Aisha ignored it. She wasn't going to let Tara, or anyone else, steal her focus today. She had bigger battles to fight. At that moment, Rebecca walked by, pausing only for a second before continuing on her way. Aisha, she said, her voice sharp, I need you to double-check those numbers. They're still off. We need them corrected by the end of the day. Aisha clenched her jaw. There it was again. The subtle undermining. She had worked late the night before, had done everything right, but it didn't matter. No matter how hard she worked, it seemed like they were always looking for a reason to doubt her. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she nodded, her voice steady. Of course, Rebecca. I'll get on it right away. Rebecca gave a curt nod and walked away, not even bothering to acknowledge the effort Aisha had already put in. Aisha fought the urge to slam her fist on the desk, but she stayed calm, taking a deep breath. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. She was going to show them she belonged here. The day dragged on, and Aisha worked through the frustration building inside her. As the clock neared 4 p.m., she felt the pressure intensify. She could hear Tara's voice from across the room, her laugh ringing out loudly as she spoke with the others. Aisha knew they were talking about her. It didn't take much to figure out the snide comments being exchanged. She took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand, finally finishing the report. Her hand shook as she hit send on her email, sending it off to Rebecca. For a moment, Aisha allowed herself to feel a sense of accomplishment. But just as quickly as the feeling came, it was replaced by a wave of anxiety. Was it enough? Had she done enough to prove herself? Marcus's words from the day before echoed in her mind. I believe in your potential, Aisha. Keep pushing. She couldn't afford to fall short now. Around 5 p.m., as Aisha was preparing to leave, she saw Marcus's office door open. He was standing there, talking with one of the other managers. As soon as he saw Aisha, his eyes brightened, and he excused himself from the conversation. Aisha, Marcus said as he walked toward her. I wanted to personally thank you for the work you've done this week. I've reviewed your report, and I have to say, I'm impressed. Keep it up. Aisha's heart swelled with pride, but she couldn't let herself get too comfortable. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'll keep working hard. You're doing more than that, Marcus said with a small smile. You're proving something. Keep showing them what you're capable of. Aisha nodded, her throat tightening. It was rare to receive praise in a place like this, and she couldn't deny that it felt good. But she knew this wasn't over yet. The fight for her place here was far from won. The following day, Aisha's resolve was tested again. Rebecca called her into her office early in the morning. Aisha, I need to talk to you about something, Rebecca said, her tone cool. I've noticed that you've been getting more attention from Marcus lately, and frankly, I'm concerned. Aisha's stomach sank. I'm not sure what you mean, Rebecca. Rebecca crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. You've been performing well, yes, but I think there's a danger in Marcus singling you out. It's making the others feel uncomfortable. Aisha's mind raced. Was Rebecca really saying this? Was she implying that Marcus's support was somehow a bad thing? Aisha had worked so hard to get to this point, and now it felt like Rebecca was trying to undermine that progress. I'm just doing my job, Aisha said, her voice firm. And I'm not here to make anyone uncomfortable. But I'm also not going to apologize for doing well. Rebecca's gaze hardened. You may want to reconsider how you're presenting yourself. People here don't appreciate someone who gets too comfortable. Aisha felt the weight of the words settle heavily in her chest. This wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about something deeper. The company had given her a seat at the table, but it was clear that some people were still uncomfortable with her being there. But Aisha wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. Later that afternoon, as Aisha worked on a new report, she received an email from Marcus. His words were brief but pointed. Meet me in my office at 3 p.m. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment when everything would change? Would he see her for who she truly was? Aisha sat at her desk, staring at the clock ticking down the minutes until 3 p.m. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she forced herself to steady her breath. The email from Marcus replayed in her mind, each word carrying a weight that was impossible to ignore. Meet me in my office at 3 p.m. She wasn't sure what it meant, but she knew that this was the moment she had been working for. This was the moment that could make or break everything. She tried to focus on the tasks in front of her, but her mind kept drifting back to the constant struggles she had faced since stepping foot in this office. The subtle racism, the passive-aggressive comments, the feeling of being an outsider, every day had been a battle. And yet, here she was, still standing, still fighting. When the clock struck 3, Aisha grabbed her notepad and walked toward Marcus's office with determination in her step. As she approached, the door opened, and Marcus stood there, his expression unreadable. Aisha, he greeted her warmly, stepping aside to let her in. Please, come in. Aisha stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what was going to happen, but she knew this was her chance to finally be heard. Have a seat, Marcus said, motioning to the chair across from his desk. She sat down, trying to keep her posture straight, her nerves simmering beneath the surface. I've been keeping an eye on you, Aisha, Marcus began, his voice steady and calm. And I'm impressed. I've seen the work you've put in, the effort you've made to prove yourself here. But more than that, I've seen something else. I've seen the way you handle pressure, the way you navigate this environment. And I have to say, I respect you. Aisha felt a lump form in her throat, the words she had longed to hear finally reaching her ears. But she couldn't let herself get emotional, not yet. Thank you, Mr. Williams, she said quietly, her voice betraying a hint of gratitude. I've also noticed something else, Marcus continued, his gaze unwavering. I've seen the way some of your colleagues have treated you. The subtle comments, the way they've tried to undermine your work. I want you to know that I see it, and I'm not going to let it slide. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. You've noticed? Of course, Marcus replied, his tone serious. And I'm not going to sit by and let it continue. I've spoken with HR, and we'll be addressing this. No one should be treated like that, especially not someone who's proven themselves as much as you have. Aisha felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had never expected anyone to speak up for her, certainly not someone in Marcus's position. The weight she had been carrying for so long seemed to lighten, just a little. But Marcus wasn't finished. I also want to tell you something, he said, his voice softening. I'm offering you a promotion. You'll be managing a team of your own in the Northwest branch. It's a high-pressure position, but I believe you have the skills and the resilience to lead it. Aisha stared at him, stunned. Her mind raced, the magnitude of the offer sinking in slowly. She had worked so hard for so long, fighting against every obstacle, every doubt, every look of judgment, and now, here she was, being given an opportunity she had never dared to dream of. I don't know what to say, Aisha said, her voice trembling with emotion. Thank you. I won't let you down. Marcus smiled. I know you won't. I've seen what you're capable of. And now it's time for everyone else to see it, too. Aisha stood up, her legs shaky beneath her. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a turning point. This was the moment that would change everything. No longer would she be fighting to fit in, fighting to be seen. She had earned her place, and now she would take it. The next day, Aisha stood at the front of a meeting room, looking out at the team she would be managing. Her new role felt surreal, like a dream she had been chasing for years. As she scanned the room, she saw familiar faces, some of them skeptical, others indifferent, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't here to win anyone's approval. She was here to lead. Good morning, everyone, Aisha began, her voice strong and clear. I'm Aisha Johnson, and I'll be taking over as the new manager for the Northwest branch. I know this transition won't be easy, but I'm here to make sure we succeed. We're all part of the same team, and I expect nothing less than respect and professionalism from each and every one of you. There was a moment of silence before one of the team members spoke up. Aisha, he said, his tone tentative. We're all looking forward to working with you. We know you've earned this. Aisha smiled, a weight lifting off her shoulders. She wasn't sure how the rest of the journey would unfold, but she knew one thing for sure. She was finally where she belonged. As she walked back to her office later that day, Aisha couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. She had fought for her place, had proven herself when no one thought she could, and now she was standing tall. There would still be challenges ahead, there always would be, but for the first time in a long time, Aisha felt ready. She had broken through the chains that held her back, and nothing, no one, was going to stop her now.